A true story of a slave who was enslaved in the 18th century and his struggle to be a free man from slavery and tough life. Peter was spending the last moments of his free time with the family. He, along with his family, was sad, and Peter was motivating them to be strong and was delivering promising words that he and his family will be free from sorrows very soon. Two people came inside his home and ordered him to go with them. He had to go, but he resisted a little bit because it was very hard to leave his family and get into slavery. There were a lot of armed men outside his home while the two men were taking him away. He bit with his teeth on one of the man's hands but stopped it because an armed man pointed a gun at his wife. Their chief nodded to the man with the gun to let go of his wife. They locked him into a cart and were taking him away when his son Scipion started running after the cart in the love of his father. People stopped him, and Peter was advising his son, again and again, to stay together forever. There were other slaves in the cart, and they were on the way to their life of slavery. Of course, they were not happy at all. One of the slaves was crying while they were passing by heads of slaves hanged on the top of wooden poles to set an example for slaves who were denied this life. Upon reaching the in line with other slaves in chains marching towards the registrations of their entry into the camp, guard was shouting, again and again, to keep their heads and eyes down. There were heart-wrenching scenes of the slaves being treated in a very inhuman way. Peter was transporting a heavy wood trunk with another slave who dropped the trunk to its heavy weight, and the guard started beating him with a leather belt. Peter tried to help that slave but was stopped by the supervisor there, who pointed a gun at his face and said he should not help without permission from the management. He said that he is a cold one and does not accept orders. The other slave thanked him, and they were on their work again. Another slave was being beaten up by the guards, and the guards were punishing him for the activity he did in the past. The other slave with Peter told him that this black man was sold with me in opal houses, ran away, and it looks like he works for Jim Fassel now. Jim Fassel was the biggest manhunter in this region. The slaves were leading a life of cruelty. They were chained at night so they cannot escape. Peter was asking Tomas about his family or someone whom he can think about. He was motivating the slaves, saying that it is just working and that they do all life to earn living, but it is hard, and God is with them. The slave whose face was iron stamped with the letter R on his face opposed his statement and said that God is not with them. Peter replied that God is with them, but they don't know about it, and if it is true, he will pray for them to God. The next day Peter, Tomas, and other slaves were working on the next day building a small train track when the guard called for a water break but stopped Peter, saying that the water break is not for him. He further added a quote from the book of Timothy that says, "All who's under the yoke of slavery should consider their masters worthy of respect." Peter heard the guards talking about President Lincoln's announcement about the freedom of slaves, and the slaves from everywhere are running toward Baton Rouge from every direction because slaves were given shelter there. The chief was angry at one of the slaves when Peter asked for mercy on the slave because he was just a child. The supervisor whistled to get off of Peter. At night, when slaves were sleeping in their cells, supervisor came and whispered in his ear that he is his God, and that Peter walks on the earth because he let him walk. Then Peter told the other slaves about Lincoln's announcement and was persuading all to get to Baton Rouge to join Lincoln's army. Baton Rouge was a 5-day journey from the swamp, but the other slaves said that we may die in the swamp, and Peter replied that they will die here as well. The next day Peter was filling a pit with dead bodies when he attacked, and there was chaos in the labor camp. Everyone was running for their life and freedom, and the soldiers were opening direct fire at them. A few were killed while Peter with 3 other slaves was running towards the swamp, and they were being followed by horsemen and sniffing dogs. Soon they were at the bank of a small water stream when one of the slaves stopped there and didn't dare to cross it because of the presence of the crocodiles and snakes. The other 3 successfully crossed the river while the one left was caught and asked where they were heading, and he replied that they were supposed to go to Baton Rouge. Horsemen killed him, and crocodiles rushed toward his dead body to have their dinner. After crossing the water stream, Peter and the other 2 parted ways to have fewer chances of being caught. Peter soon saw a house of white people who were praying when a little girl saw him and shouted that they have got a runner. Peter ran from there and stole white clothing from their house to cover his wounds. That later helped him to trick the sniffing dogs into losing track of him. He was very close to being caught when he dived into a pond of water and held his breath under the water. The horseman went away after a few minutes. Peter came out of the water and was about to get to land when a crocodile attacked him, pushing him back into the water. Peter attacked him back for his defense and soon was able to take over the crocodile and killed it. He was then getting rid of the leeches that were stuck to his body and were sucking the blood out of him. The horseman found the dead crocodile and opened it up if he ate one of the slaves running for their life. Horseman and Peter spent that night doing nothing and taking rest. The chief was telling a story about himself that he loved a black girl and secretly gave him food daily, but his father killed that girl brutally and said that they are not equal to us. The next morning Peter was heading towards Baton Rouge, covering himself with mud. He was looking very tired but was not giving up. The horsemen were still at his trail. Peter found a small tree house and climbed up there. He drank some fresh water from the bowl and treated his wounds by heating his knife. He then climbed up a tree to take some honey when the chief of the horsemen noticed some smoke rising from the fire. In the meanwhile, Peter left there in a small boat. A soldier came to meet Peter's wife and told her that Captain Lyons sold her and she will be taken away from her children. Chief came looking for Peter and found that he is gone now. Peter, with the honey he took from the tree, he reached the bank and left the boat, which was later found by the chief. Peter then confronted the other slave who pointed a gun at him, but Peter gave him an onion to rub on his body and clothes to get rid of the dogs. He later offered him to eat the same by eating himself first. They ran from there and hid. Peter was in the trunk of the tree, but the other slave climbed up another tree. The slave on the tree was shot down by the chief, but Peter was saved from them. Peter's wife was talking to her daughter to meet her near the machines, and she must not be late. They later met, and her mother sacrificed by putting her arm into the machine so she can buy some time before being transferred to her new owner. Peter was out of the tree trunk, and at night he saw some horses running away from a burning house. He went into the house, ate food, and found a child suffering from pain and having breathing problem due to toxic gases. He got that child and was thinking of giving first aid to him, and the child gave him the cross when the soldier got him at the gunpoint. Peter attacked the soldier and killed him with the cross and shot the other soldier by grabbing the gun from the first one. He ran into the long grass when the chief came looking for him. He was near to getting caught by the dog but shot it with the gun he had. If we talk about the actual events that happened in real life, it took him 10 days and 64 kilometers of running through the swamp to get to Baton Rouge. Peter reached Iowa's front and saw a lot of dead bodies there. There were sounds of firing and cannons coming from very near. The chief got him on the way and was about to shoot at him, but he got shot instead by the Lincoln Army. The actual battle for his freedom started here when he was lying in a temporary hospital by the army on the bed and thinking about his wife and kids. There were a lot of other wounded soldiers in the camp. There were different scenes there. People were happy, sad, and fearful at the same time. Peter reached the supervisor of the army camp to know about his wife and kids, but no one knew about them. The supervisor told him that he is in an army camp during the time of war, and all of these were refugees, and there are a set of rules and regulations that apply to them. He and other people have to work at the federal farms governed by the army till the war situation is over. Peter was handed over to the native guard. While he was walking outside, he met the third slave named Gordon, and he was also badly wounded. Both were happy that they made it here. Recruits were given training in the next scene, where he was told to pick up the uniform, but a few people came there and told him that he can't participate until he is completely fine. The lieutenant motivated him to go with them, and a uniform will be waiting for him when he gets back. They were from the newspaper, and they clicked some pictures of him. They wanted to show the world what exactly slavery looks like. He was now in uniform the next day and reported to Captain. He was explaining to his soldiers about Johnny Reb and his preparations. Captain asked Peter about his duty at the slavery camp, to which Peter replied that he built the railroads, and they have bigger cannons than they have and have many soldiers. Captain was told that the way Peter came is a killing field, but they had to attack that camp. Captain gave his remarks on the picture of Peter, that this picture shows a lot of disobedience. Peter replied, I fight them, and they beat me, they whip me, they string me up, they sell me, they throw me down a well, they pull me out and beat me again, and I fight them again. They cut me, they burn my neck, they burn my feet, they break the bones in my body more times than I can count, but they never were able to break me. The captain said that we'll test that metal and ordered them to attack those bastards at dawn. They were all marching and getting shot one by one, and soon they were in front of their enemies, and headed towards the trenches despite heavy cross-firing. There was a blast, and Peter was lying unconscious near his fellow soldiers. He woke up and again marched towards the enemy lines. He was shooting at enemies and heading toward them. He was motivating everyone to get to the cannons, and they must fight. They were now face to face with the enemy and were successful in taking control. The battle was over, and all the slaves were brought to their families. Captain Lyons was shot in the head, and then there was an announcement from the native guard that all of them are free now. All were happy, and everyone was meeting their families after a very long time. Peter was looking for his wife and kids and calling their names in the crowd. He started worrying but soon saw his kids and then his wife and rushed to meet them. All were happy that they got freedom and met their loved ones. On January 1, 1836, President Abraham Lincoln proclaimed enslaved people in the rebellious states to be free. In Louisiana alone, 350,000 enslaved people faced a choice: remain in bondage and wait for the Union Army to liberate them or take freedom for themselves. And the movie ends here. Please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share it with your friends and family. Thank you.